So while Vera and Emily are having this kind of tete-a-tete conversation about everything under the sun, we also see this kind. I mean, I think it's important really quickly just to kind of note that they are not all together collectively. They are all doing their own thing and having their own conversations while they are simultaneously waiting for Frank Narcott to show up, which we know he won't. Um, we also while Vera and Emily are having this conversation, we also see kind of the birth of alliances in this section of the text. And these alliances are pretty fragile and they are going to change constantly as more people begin to die and as more things happen. But our first real alliance is made between Armstrong, Bloor, and Lombard. And I think it's important to note that this is kind of a natural alliance because they are these strong, capable men. And I also think it's important to indicate that Dr. Armstrong, his first inclination was to go to the judge. And I don't know if it's because they have that pre existing relationship that I talked about, or because the judge is a smart, kind of logical thinking man. But he dismisses that idea because the judge is weak, he's frail, he's old, and he's just sleeping on the kind of patio waiting for time to pass by. So he ditches the judge in favor of Bloor and Lombard because those guys are the strong guys. And in some ways, they are kind of archetypal or stereotypical type of characters. Armstrong, he'd be kind of the brainy scientist, right? He's the smart guy. Bloor is this kind of, he's not necessarily smart on books, but he is this kind of streetwise man of the world who is, a law-abiding cop, right? And then we have Philip Lombard, who is, I mean, we really in these chapters get the sense of Philip Lombard being this really shady, kind of, for lack of a better word, swashbuckler kind of guy. He moves like a panther, and we really there is a bunch of suspicion that's cast on him because of his kind of shady past. And however, these three guys come together and they really have this conversation, and it really begins with the subject of that woman who is not worthy of being named, that woman being Mrs. Rogers. And they really kind of confirm their suspicions of Rogers and Philip Lombard during this kind of search of the island. True to fashion, says what no one else will. He talks the truth. I mean, we already know that he's kind of been honest with us up until now, that they've all been brought to Soldier Island for crimes that they have committed, and they're crimes that cannot be brought home to their perpetrators. So, in other words, Philip Lombard says, we're all here because we're being punished. And he's smart enough and he has this insight to know, to reach that conclusion. And they ultimately decide that someone else is on the island. An unknown soldier is out watching them, out looking to get them. So they search the island, they search the house, and there's nothing. And I want to mention that this kind of search of the island, the search of the house, is not only a physical search, it is also this kind of psychological search where they talk about each other. They talk about their suspicions. They talk about the other characters who are not necessarily with them. And like I said, Lombard has this kind of insight into what's really happening, and he voices that kind of. I mean, it's kind of like, telling you things that you don't want to hear, but you need to hear. And we also find out during this search that Philip Lombard has a gun. He has a revolver, and this shocks Armstrong and Bloor. And I want to mention really quickly that the revolver, in some ways, is it. I mean, why are they so afraid of a man with a gun? Well, someone's out there killing people, right? But the deaths that have happened have not been by these very violent means. They've been very subtle. They've been, poisons, essentially. And that's not really, I mean, you think about someone like Philip Lombard, is that really going to be his MO for killing someone? I don't know. I don't think so. But anyways, the revolver, it's this kind of source of protection, but it's also a source of destruction. And it kind of I find it interesting that the men who he's with, Bloor and Armstrong, are so put out by the fact that he has this revolver. Why does he have it? And we automatically, because of Bloor and Armstrong, we have this more reason to be suspicious of him. Bloor and Armstrong certainly are, but because I mean he's the self-admitted killer. He says, I left these men. But the question I have for you all, is it unreasonable that he should have this revolver? I mean, think about the reason for why he's there in the first place. He's been told that he might have a bit of trouble on the island. So why wouldn't he want to go protected? So there's that for you. The other thing that is interesting that happens in these sections of the book is this conversation between Vera and General MacArthur. And General MacArthur, he is sitting by the sea. And he's kind of, remember, I think that we are meant to question his sanity, his mindset, and all of that kind of thing. But I don't know as if I mean, everybody else thinks he's going crazy, but I don't necessarily think he is. I think he's incredibly insightful. And he has this insight about what is really going on. And he's basically sitting by the sea waiting for the end, he says. And he has this real kind of knowledge that he knows what the future holds for him. He knows that he is going to die. And he knows essentially that every one of them on the island is too. And he welcomes that kind of death. He welcomes this end of it all. And Vera can't quite understand. And remember, back to when she was talking we got her views of Cyril and Hugo, she says that she wants to live. Death is for other people. And he really admits that and he says that, death is this sense of comfort. It's this sense of peace. It's a release of a heavy burden. He doesn't have to carry it all anymore. And because of that, because he is resigned to his fate, he openly confesses to the fact that he did indeed kill Arthur Richmond, probably for the first time to another person. He's confessed it to himself. He knows that he's done it himself. But this is kind of probably the first time that he's ever openly admitted to anyone that, hey, yeah, I'm guilty. I did this. And something he says, when he says that it's going to be this sense of comfort, Vera, of course, doesn't understand. And he says, Vera, you don't understand, but you will someday. And this kind of this implication here is kind of interesting. It implies that MacArthur sees or recognizes something in Vera. He has openly voiced the truth, and when she says, I don't understand, he says, I know, I know. And what does he know? Does he know that Vera doesn't understand, or does he know something else about Vera? So, um, food for thought. So keep that in mind as we move forward. After this conversation, and while the three men are out looking on the island and searching the house and finding rope and all that kind of stuff, it's time to eat again. It's lunch. And it's remember these they are all brought back together. This real kind of chaotic activity that has happened during the morning is brought to order again. They are polite and civil to each other's faces, and I think it's important to note that Roger is still performing his duty like he should. And I also think it's important to kind of remark on the perceptions of Rogers. Lombard calls him this wonderful animal. Armstrong calls him a first class butler. And it's they say these things about him after they've been talking smack about him all morning, and with all of these suspicions of him killing his wife. It's like none of that ever happened. Um, I don't know. It's just really interesting that how they can go from, him being this cold-blooded murderer to a first-class butler. So, anyways, I also think it's important to mention, or it's worth mentioning, what they are eating. They are eating cold tongue. And yeah, I mean, it means like tongue of an animal. But cold tongue could be, like when you give somebody the cold shoulder, it's like you're ignoring it. This kind of lunch, this meal, this collective activity together allows them to be ignorant once again of everything that's going on around them. Cold tongue, when you die, you have a cold tongue. So it's also this kind of overhanging symbol of death. But cold tongue is also like if you have a cold tongue, you can't speak. So it's like this kind of silence. And all of these people have really kind of remained silent in terms of what they've done their entire life. So, anyways, we have during lunch, they notice that the general is missing, and they go in search of him, and they find him dead, and he is the one who said he'd stay there. And the death of General MacArthur is really kind of a poignant death, because first they've had the death of Anthony Marston, which may or may not be a suicide, but they ultimately decide that it's murder because Mrs. Rogers has died, and they can't both die at the same time. That's too coincidental. And then General MacArthur dies, and that's kind of like the proverbial realization that, oh my gosh, we're all in danger. And I think it's important to note this symbolic nature of General MacArthur's death, because think about his attitude and his kind of mood or tone that he has throughout the morning and the evening of the of our first couple of chapters. He's been very calm. He is the proverbial calm before the storm. And once General MacArthur's body is brought in from the outside, all of a sudden a storm breaks out. So he's the calm before the storm. He's the calm before the chaos. So now everything is going to be topsy-turvy. Things are going to forever change on this island. And the changes in the weather are going to be indicative of changes in our characters, and changes in what happens moving forward. So keep an eye on that. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that now they know that nobody is coming to get them because when can't boats get to Soldier Island? They can't get there when there is a southeasterly or a storm. So now they know they are stuck. So after the end of our kind of chapter 9, we get they reconvene once again. They are in that kind of comfort. They come together to examine the evidence. And the conclusion that they reach is that everyone is in danger. No one is safe. And that UNON, this kind of guy that Armstrong, Bloor, and Lombard have searched for all morning, the reason they haven't found him is because there's no one else on the island. UNON is one of the remaining guests. And they go through and they kind of have to provide alibis for what they were doing all morning. And most, specifically, Dr. Armstrong relies on his appearance and his reputation, saying, I couldn't possibly do anything like that. So as they are going through their alibis about where they were, what they were doing during the times of all 3 deaths, we also get this really kind of important thing that I wanted to point out. Lombard's view of women. And basically, he basically says, I suppose you'll leave the women out of it, meaning the women are not, we can't suspect them because women can't be these kind of killers. And he says that basically they are incapable, he doesn't believe that they are capable of murder or homicidal mania. And is he right? Is the question that I ask for you. I mean, so far, he's been the most honest, he's been the most perceptive, and here it's like think about it, and if you think about it, these women, Mrs. Rogers, Emily Brent, and Vera Claythorne, have all been brought to the island because they have been accused of committing murder, or they have been accused of being responsible for someone's death, and it's like an oversight for him. So it's like he's missing kind of the obvious that women are capable. And I don't know, what do you guys think? So let me know. The other thing that I want to mention is that as we end this kind of chapter, we do have this ensuing chaos and this ensuing kind of sense of danger. So as the storm moves on, we really, at the end of our chapter 9, nothing is really resolved, and everything is all and out chaotic. So the final note that I wanted to mention that I didn't mention, and I should have, that we also get Roger is the first to notice that as each person dies, a soldier or a figure goes missing. And I really kind of want you guys to keep an eye out on this kind of indication of growing insanity or increasing loss of sanity. So I hope you guys are enjoying this novel as much as I am, and please, I'm looking forward to seeing what your observations are from this section of the text, and we will pick up next week on the kind of 3rd quarter of our novel, and see who's next. So thank you guys. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm excited to see what you guys think.